Chapter 18, National Security and Foreign Policy. Foreign policy, the programs and principles that direct the government's interaction with the rest of the world. U.S. foreign policy includes security and advancing democracy, economic freedoms, and human rights. Requires deliberation and long-term planning, covers a range of politics, military, and economic matters. There are people that say our first and foremost items need to be foreign policy. Other people believe domestic issues need to be first and foremost. From the founding to the 20th century, we practiced what was known as isolationism, where we did not go to war until it was brought onto us. We did that with World War I and World War II. Monroe Doctrine, where we stated that it is our job to protect our hemisphere. Post-Civil War, U.S. expands activities in Latin America and Asia, that we need to do trade and business, and we need to be a global force. World War I and World War II, U.S. emerges as a leader of liberal democracies. We also want to do containment with the Cold War era, that it was our job to stop the spread of communism, because we thought there would be a domino theory where it would transcend to other nations. If one fell to communism, they would all fall to communism. National Security Act of 1947 was that platform, that we needed to take care of other nations, and we needed to intervene when we needed to. Use of military forces abroad. There were 39 interventions from 1798 to 1849. From 1850 to 1899, there were 64. From 1900s to 1949, 69. From 1950 to 1999, 111. Okay, this is where you see some changes going on. Iraq and terror. Military action against Iraq in the 1990s and 2000s. September 11th terrorist attacks. War on terror, now a policy initiative. And we have a preemption policy that we need to strike first and thwart out problems. Afghanistan and Al-Qaeda. The problem with the war on terrorists is there are so many terrorists out there. And, with technology the way it is now, it can spread so fast. Moralism versus pragmatism. Americans' exceptionalism encompasses two ideas of moralism: desire to defend the nation's way of life and desire to remake the world. So we want the way of life, we have it in the United States, and we want to make the world in our image. Pragmatism, practical focus on the cost and benefit of the action. How much is it going to cost us in monetary and loss of life? Some presidents have avoided the righteous fight that the nation was unprepared to fight. So, the view of the U.S. influences in countries. U.S. compared to by country. And here it will tell you back and forth. Mainly positive, mainly negative. So, China, negative. Egypt, negative. Turkey. Look at where these are going, back and forth. Openness versus security. Openness in foreign policy allows more information and more viewpoints. Secrecy is also necessary in some circumstances, especially when engaging covert operations. I think we have a hard time with this. We want everything to be open and we need to know about it. But on the other hand, if you don't have secrecy, then you for sure are going to let them know what's going on. And how can we have these great covert operations to take care of things? Civilian control versus military prestige. Military under civilian control. President is commander-in-chief. Restrictions on who may serve as Secretary of Defense. Americans give great respect and deterrence to the military, especially during times of war. Look at Executive Order 9066 when we did the internment camps with the Japanese. We gave the high honor to our military to take care of things. Unilateralism versus multilateralism. Unilateralism prevalent through early 20th century. Multilateralism is prevalent now. We look to the United Nations. We look to NATO. We look to the World Trade Organizations. If we want to do sanctions on a country, we talk about it. Sometimes we over-talk it. We want to make sure that we're not going in and doing this without some other benefit. We don't want it to be just the United States. We want it to be that we have support with other countries. Key figures, the president, the key figure in foreign policy and national security. War power resolution limits the war making. Remember, the president cannot declare war. That is Congress. But he can send people over for certain times, uses treaty power and appointment power to influence foreign and defense policies, and coordinate ideas and items that are going to happen. National Security Council was created in 1947. The National Security Council, the NSC, meetings allow deliberation among several political actors. The National Security Advisor is appointed by the President and runs the National Security Council, and they advise the President of what is going on. Civilian departments and agencies. State Department, involved in foreign policy, advises presidents on foreign affairs. Ambassadors and embassy systems come in here, linked to many specialized foreign policy agencies. Commerce, treaty, agriculture departments are also involved in international economic policies because we have trade agreements with other people. We help fund them with donations and loans. Active duty personnel and the defense expenditures. So 2011, look at the amount of personnel. We've went down, but yet our expenditures is up. Those war supplies cost a lot of money. Department of Defense oversees the military, also maintains global system of bases, communication networks, and intelligence system. The Secretary of Defense plays a policy role. Since 1972, military became an all-volunteer forces. This was smart when it was done under Richard Nixon. Okay? The president has the power to say, our military is all volunteer. So think about that. 1972. It's 2016. So, most people don't stay in the military over 44 years. Okay? They get out by then. So the chances, I can say, almost all people that are in the military joined the military under the all-volunteer forces. With that being said, then when you go to war willingly. You know what you're getting yourself into. After 9/11, we had an increase in the military. It was after Pearl Harbor, too, we had an increase in people wanting to go into the military. And this gives the president power. U.S. is the largest of the U.S. Army is the largest of the armed services. U.S. Navy, U.S. Air Force, Reserve, and National Guard are also in there. Intelligence community, no single mission, but seeks to understand aim and capability of foreign nations and groups, especially when security is threatened. Comprised of 17 organizations, including CIA, National Security, and National Reconnaissance Office. All three of those are agencies that you really don't know what they're doing at any given time. And a lot of their stuff is classified where they go in and out of. Congress. Congress controls the purse, budget. You know, Congress controls that money on where it's going to go. Congress also controls the confirmation power because they might not appoint who the president wants. You know, the president's going to appoint the Secretary of Defense, but Congress might not confirm that appointment. Treaties approval power. It's a case-by-case treaty approval. Just because the president wants it doesn't mean it's going to happen. Look at Woodrow Wilson and the League of Nations. Woodrow Wilson, brilliant man, 14-point plan. Congress said, no, we're not approving that treaty of the League of Nations, and we never become a League of Nations member. Congress also placed restrictions or mandates on broad range of policies, war powers, intelligence, and covert operations. Anytime they don't like what's going on, they call a hearing. Courts. More active in domestic affairs, usually defer in foreign affairs, especially during wartime. But some cases are exceptions. 1952 Youngstown case, Pentagon Papers, New York Times versus the United States. New York Times versus the United States. Remember, the Pentagon Papers are the release of what's going on with the government on how they're handling the war in Vietnam, all the way for 5 presidents. You know, it was a big deal. 2 special courts deal with intelligence issues, the FISC and the Court of Reviews. Interest groups. Some contend foreign interest and military-industrial complex play too large of a role. Other groups influence foreign policy. Business groups, ethnic groups, humanitarian groups, religious advocacy groups. These groups protest for different things, you know, unfair labor practices, religious rights, those kind of things. Public opinion in the media. Secrecy hinders public deliberation. Presidents and legislators are concerned about polls and if they're going to be reelected. There's a rally effect if something's going on, you know. President Obama, after they got Osama bin Laden, you know, he got the guy. That was one of his claims to fame when he ran for his second election. Foreign policy opinions reflect partisan polarization, and media is used to reach a larger area of audience. They use the audience a lot from the media to release information, leak information. Foreign affairs, how it looks right now. Partisan divide of a peaceful through strength. Why do Americans lack foreign policy knowledge? The way the world is taught, world history is taught in schools. Popular culture lacks foreign representation. Americans lack language skills. You know, you don't have to take a foreign language in schools, and most other schools, kids start learning another language in elementary school, where we do not do that. Solutions: travel, study abroad, more expensive and sophisticated travel, training for policymakers. You need to look at it. You know, a lot of people just think, well, we live in Alphas, Oklahoma, and that's it. Or we live in Oklahoma, or we live in South Dakota. But you need to look at the bigger world views. If something happens in a bigger area, how is that going to affect me? President Barack Obama and the U.S. ability to prosper in the future recalls that earlier generations faced fascism and communism not just with missiles and tanks, but with sturdy alliances and enduring convictions. They understood that our power alone could not protect us, nor does it entitle us to do as we please. Instead, they knew that our power grows through its prudent use. Our security emanates from the justness of our cause and the force of our example, the tempering qualities of humanity and restraint. I think restraint is one of those things. We have to know when we're supposed to get in and when we're not. Okay, chapter 18. Our test will be on May 5th and May 6th. So be ready for that. This is our last in-class test. And once you take that, then the final will be open. And remember, the final is extra credit. Please check your grades. Let me know if you need something. Test for chapters 16 through 18 will be on May 5th for my Thursday classes and May 6th for my Friday classes. Have a great day, guys.